And it does sound like we do have Matt Cappucci on the phone. He's in Annapolis. Matt, if you can hear me, tell me what you're seeing.
Yeah, so I actually just left Annapolis. There was tree damage all over the place. I pulled up near what looked to be a stadium type thing there. Was looking west, saw the wall cloud.
Oh, look at that.
I started driving northward. Yeah, you can see the video on screen right there, I imagine. Started driving northward, and very quickly, the funnel touched down, rapidly condensed, tree damage all around, lots of debris in the air, and drivers were unwittingly driving into it. So I tried to pull over, waving at folks.
Underwent something called bombogenesis, meaning it explosively intensified. Think of a storm as like a vacuum cleaner. It sucked in so much air very quickly. They went from virtually nothing on a weather map to a hurricane-force low-pressure system with 100
going up and in. But this area right here, that's exactly what we're watching for a potential tornado. Again, just checked radar. Looks like we have winds on. But again, if this mixes down, you could be talking 60 to 70 mile per hour wind gusts. And then the rotation right here, we're not seeing a lot of green, not much in the way of inbound winds. Easterly winds heading in to fuel the storm. But still, if something was to pop up, it'd be right in this.
Extra moisture translates to more snowfall. Behind me, I'm right on Cape Cod, Massachusetts, where the winds were crazy, hurricane force. But behind
is this snowstorm going to be, do you think?
You know, here in the Northeast, we're used to pretty big snowstorms, but the really impressive thing with this isn't just the amounts, which will be blockbuster, but the rapidity with which the snow will come down, close to 10 centimeters per hour at times. There's no road crew in the world. 10:20 in the morning, and took to social media to figure out what was going on, and that kind of launched this big investigation as to what that loud boom was. And it turns out my friend Peter Forrester looked at satellite imagery and found this, a lightning strike southwest of Winchester around 10:24 a.m. The question, though, there were no thunderstorms, so what was that lightning strike? Well, it turns out there was a meteor that exploded in the upper atmosphere, released an infrared amount of light, and that was something the GOES 16 satellite saw, interpreted as lightning, and that's why you could actually see it on satellite. Now, the other cool thing, too, my friend Chris went and looked at a bunch of different Raspberry Pi seismometers, basically little things that sense how much the ground moves, and found the signature of this boom. So basically, it produced like an earthquake-like signature that was felt far and wide across Southwest Virginia. So something really amazing down there. 81 in D.C. right now, 79 in Dulles. No more meteors in the forecast tonight. All that we have, clouds and high humidity. Dew point is 70 right now. Couple showers out there at the moment. Just one or two out there.
So much. I think the biggest thing that would be easiest to tie to link-wise to climate change with this particular event would be the very heavy rainfall. For every degree Fahrenheit the air temperature increases, it can hold 4% more water. So that fuels things like these floods we saw.
Incremental reductions in emissions could actually do something about them. But what else should we be thinking about? Because we're not hardening our infrastructure enough either.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Our infrastructure can't handle things like this because realistically, we were building for yesterday. We're not really equipped to handle what's happening right now, never mind down in the future. When these recurrence intervals, how frequently these things happen, becomes more and more problematic. Now, one thing we saw last night, the rainfall rates were excessive. 3.24 inches at Newark International Airport in just 1 hour's time. That's a month's worth of rainfall coming down in 60 minutes, 3.15 inches in Central Park. So a similar thing. And very little can handle that kind of rainfall. We don't have the drainage systems. These cities are old. They can't handle that rainfall. Urban sprawl has led to a bigger footprint that's really soaking up more rainfall. So I think the biggest thing will be these precipitation extremes, especially in cities that have underpass.
And these things are incredibly artistic, but I imagine they taste just as good, if not better than they look. So how'd you do this?
Well, I prepared.
So with this type of storm, multiple different areas of circulation are possible. That's why anybody, I'd say north of Thurmont, east towards Emmitsburg, you got to be in shelter right now. Lowest floor, keep in mind, what goes up has to come down. So all that energy up there is going to come back down in the form of damaging winds. So you could get gusts to about 75 miles per hour.
We have this dip in the jet stream carrying a low vorticity or spin and low pressure east. We call that a shortwave trough. So there is some disturbed weather moving in our direction, which is why we have those southerly winds. But it has a mixed bag of all sorts of different types of precipitation. Rain.
It's already heating up at this hour. Nice dry air all over the place. Look at that. Dew point down in 30s in D.C. Dulles, same thing. That's why your hands are probably cracking. You might need the chapstick. When the air is dry, it strives to evaporate moisture. That can include a melting snowflake. If a snowflake begins to melt, any water on its edges, on its periphery. And hi gang, I'm my radar meteorologist Matt Cappucci. Solar eclipses are the most spectacular displays ever visible from Earth, hands down. It's the only time humans can directly observe the solar corona or the sun's atmosphere. We're talking about smells and candles and stuff.
Lightning actually has a smell. It's the ozone produced by the lightning. Same smell you get when you open up the dryer and you have little sparks. That actually generates ozone. Yeah, and the human nose is extremely sensitive to it. So you can smell the equivalent of about 3 teaspoons in an Olympic-sized swimming pool. So, what? Yeah. Oh, I also have the forecast to do.
Wow.
I was geeking out this morning. It is 76 degrees out there right now, dew point of 69. It is feeling soupy, and we have down.
Now, the cool thing, that offshore low could actually develop some subtropical characteristics. Not really expecting any development there, but kind of cool to see. Now, the reason it won't get a name is because the low-level center over here is kind of divorced from the convection, the shower and thunderstorm activity, so they won't really link up enough to really mature. Overnight tonight, 46 in D.C. Guys, we're going to take a bit of a science lesson this morning. It's a really neat setup that favors radiation cooling. Here's a look at the U.S. Capitol right now. It's about 45 degrees in D.C., but many of our outlying areas are anywhere between, say, 50s and upper 20s. And here's the reason why. It comes down to our wind. You see, where the wind is gone calm, we get that radiation cooling thanks to dry air in place and clear skies. Nothing to really insulate or blanket our temp. 53 in Quantico, but like we said, 29 Manassas. Look at that temperature gradient over just a few miles.
Cool and a quiet night, Marina.
Yeah, but as everything December, we've been on quite the roller coaster, and it seems like the weather roller coaster continues tonight. Matthew Cappucci joining us now with a look at that forecast. Hey, Matthew.
Hey, guys, definitely, yeah, a bit of a roller coaster, but one roller coaster we have to talk about right now, airplanes. If you were flying, which obviously you're not right now because you're watching TV, but if you were flying from the West Coast to the East Coast, you could be cruising at speeds over 700 miles per hour thanks to a very strong jet stream. Take a look at this map from Flight Radar 24. It shows you all the aircraft in the U.S. cruising at speeds over 700. Now, keep in mind, the cruise speed of a Boeing 737 is about 520 miles per hour, meaning you're going about 180 faster than you otherwise should be, thanks to a very strong jet stream. Here's that jet stream right now. That's kind of the
story, which is the weather.
Again, this tornado moving through right here. This is the tornado right here, folks. Again, tornado on the ground in Annapolis, Maryland.
That is our Matthew Cappucci, who spotted that tornado in Anne Arundel County a few hours ago. As you can see it there in the distance, it hit Anne Arundel County at approximately about 2:30, and Matthew was describing for us
Maryland, where meteorologist Matthew Cappucci tried to stop people driving into a twister.
Tornado right now, tornado in Annapolis, Maryland. People driving into it. They have no idea what the hell they are doing. Guys, stop!
Conditions there. What have you seen today, Matthew?
Well, I actually chased this tornado. I'm used to storm chasing. Today was originally my day off. I went to chase what I thought would be a rotating storm. It wound up producing a significant tornado here in Annapolis, Maryland. I'm on West Street.
So why are we getting the wind? Something called downsloping, meaning air comes down the mountains, it compresses, it squeezes, it warms up and dries out. So that's something that results from something called adiabatic compression. Now, the cool thing, if we look at the sounding from Cumberland, a profile of the atmosphere, we see green line, dew point, and temperature are close. So the air is cool and it's almost saturated, but we go towards D.C. later on this afternoon. The red line has moved right. It is much warmer and we're drier thanks to that downsloping. So kind of neat to see. I think because of the warmth, we'll mix down some of the gusty winds, but not all of them. Lows tonight falling back to around 10 to 15 plus degrees above average in the center of the country, but eventually that warmth.
4 and 8. And we're off to a good start. Matt's going to show you that. He's outside on our sky deck this morning. Matt, it looks absolutely gorgeous for snow lovers across the area right now.
You know, it's picture perfect. We've been kind of snow-starved here the past 2 or 3 years. I can tell you, it's coming down to beat the band right now. About a mile visibility, which corresponds to roughly an inch per hour snowfall rate. So in the moderate to almost heavy category, it'll only get more significant as the morning wears on. So hit the maps right now, show what's going on. We have a lot of action to talk about because a big low pressure system off to our southwest, it is intensifying. Here's what it is right now. It's pushing north and east. The wraparound on the backside could actually give us some thunder snow later on. Already at Carver's Gap, Tennessee, about 4 or 5 flashes. That's the same system pushing north and east thanks to something called conditional symmetric instability. Basically, picture tubes of air in the atmosphere being sloshed diagonally upwards high enough that you get charge separation and a few flashes of thunder and lightning. So really cool stuff there. Here's a low pressure system rapidly wrapping up, pushing eastward. So you can see it really looks like a cinnamon bun swirl, dry air on the backside.
More cool thing, there will be a total solar eclipse tomorrow in Antarctica, which unfortunately I won't get to see. The path goes right down here. It's about 260 miles wide, minute and 45 seconds of totality.
but that's something we won't get to enjoy in the D.C. area. For us, though, it's a couple days after the winter solstice. We hit the maps right now, show you this. It's a really cool vision from South America. That is French Guiana, and you notice that little tiny speck. That is the James Webb Space Telescope that just launched out of French Guiana about an hour and a half ago. It is set to replace the Hubble telescope. Now, we have 12 days until fall. We know that. It's going to feel like summer later on this week. But with only 12 days until fall, you might wonder, why does it smell like fall? It's actually smelled like fall outside. You might have stepped outside this morning and thought, it smells a little melancholy out here. Well, I want to show you this really cool map that I spent like a half hour producing earlier on. The air we have over us right now on September 3rd was over northern Saskatchewan, Canada. Then it did this weird little loop-de-loop thing over the Hudson Bay. Now, there's a lot of pine up there, forest up there. It's darker, and so the leaves are already changing up there. Some are actually dying, and that's the same air mass that is coming down here. So we smell whatever was happening with that air mass way up there. That's the air over us right now. So why does it smell like this? Well, the leaves die. They kind of breathe out gases through their stomata, the little holes in them. That gas includes terpenes and isoprenoids. So basically, terpenes are something that comes from plants, and we have one called pinene. It smells like pine, and that's part of what we're smelling. We also have something called volatile organic compounds, these gases from plants that interact with nitrous oxide in our atmosphere to produce ozone. So it smells clean, it smells like plants, it smells like fall, and that's why this time of year it's tough to not conjure up some fall memories when you step outside. Full 7A coming up in about 30 minutes time. We'll talk about the return to summer in just a few minutes. Guys?
Good news, there finally is an end in sight after a record-breaking season.
Yeah, 30 named storms this season. So what were some of the biggest storms you saw this year?
You know, this season has been off the charts in so many different ways. I'm 23 years old, my hairline is receding, and I think this season has part of that. Like you said, 30 named storms, 13 hurricanes, 6 major, and what we saw this season were multiple double whammies. For example, Lake Charles, Louisiana saw Hurricane Laura, Category 4, with winds over 220.
So can you tell us what these fire tornadoes look like and where exactly they touch down?
Yeah, so there were 5 fire tornadoes in just 2 hours between 1 p.m. and 3 p.m. Pacific Daylight Time on Saturday. And you have to keep in mind, these are not little fire whirls like you sometimes see in the flames on even a stove or a campfire. These were actual tornadoes made out of fire. And what happened, you had all the smoke go up, an incredible amount of buoyancy thanks to the heat released by the fire. And that took on the characteristics of a supercell thunderstorm, the entire smoke plume starting to rotate. And you had at least 5 tornadoes of fire and smoke drop down, with winds likely between 160 and 200 kilometers per hour.
You know, these images, when we're looking at them, they are...
Yeah, that's really a big thing here. It's not the temperatures that bad to begin with. It's more the fact that their infrastructure can't really handle this. It's like how the same temperatures that Phoenix sees every summer are routine there, but would translate to tens of thousands of deaths in New York City because the infrastructure there can't handle it. It's about local anomalies. And unfortunately, what we're seeing is bad news. And all this can be traced back to a disruption in the polar vortex that started at the beginning of January. Now, think about your morning cup of coffee. If you stir it, you get kind of a whirlpool and a dip in there. And that's kind of how the polar vortex behaves. But if you interrupt that vortex, if you were to put your hand in the cup of coffee, all of a sudden the vortex would fill in, it would weaken, and that's exactly what happened when a weather system disrupted the polar vortex. That pushed all the cold air contained down to mid-latitudes, and now we're getting these blobs, these lobes of frigid Arctic air all the way down over the lower 48.
That satellite imagery really tells you something, but we're going to get the full story now from Matthew Cappucci. He's a meteorologist with the Washington Post. He is live in Gulf Shores, Alabama. Matthew, good afternoon. Thanks for joining us. What is the situation where you are right now?
Nick, thanks so much for having me. We're seeing widespread wind damage here on Gulf Shores, not even near the immediate coastline. I'm about 2 kilometers inland right now, and yet you see significant structural damage here. We had gusts overnight to 140 to 150 kilometers per hour, as well as widespread rainfall. Now, I was driving down earlier.
You know what we want to do now? We want to do something special. We want to check in with Matthew Cappucci.
Yeah, see my fellow weather guy.
He's in Chile. Was it morning there? Hi, Matthew.
Hey, good morning. A bit tough to hear, but we are going to Chile right now. Outside, you can see the mountains are absolutely gorgeous. The landscape is incredible. But last night, I saw the Geminid meteor shower in the Atacama Desert, which was absolutely sublime. Hit about 40, 50 meteors every single hour under those clear, dark skies. There you see my friend and I underneath the Milky Way with galaxies just visible completely up above. It was crazy. Like, we could see galaxies. We saw, I'd say, about 60 to perhaps 70 meteors total. There you see the expansive landscape that we were at. It's neat because along the Bolivian border with Chile, you have something called the altiplano, so the high plains are about 8,000 feet above the ground. It's incredibly dry. Temperatures drop very rapidly overnight. But the neat thing is, because of that, you have no light pollution whatsoever. And there you see, there's a glacier that we flew over yesterday en route to where we are now in Patagonia. It is something just remarkable. Even looking out the window right now, you appreciate this. We get lenticular clouds, or weird little disc-shaped things over the mountains.
This rapidly spread and change hundreds of lives.
Louisville is like the ideal. It's been the ideal place to raise children. It was voted like the best place to live in the United States 4 years in a row. It's the sweetest community that I've ever been in my life.
Took on the way to work today. These are gravity waves, ripples in the sky. Many folks tweeting me saying they saw these all day long. And the reason is thanks to precipitation as well. Here's one more shot of that showing those ripples going overhead. And the really cool thing, too, is that we can calculate the frequency with which those ripples go up and down or undulate with something called the Brunt-Weisler frequency. Now, I won't do the math for you, but we'll say about 10 minutes to go up and down. So a little bit of cool fluid dynamics for you on this Monday afternoon. Here's the pre-surprise.
Let's bring in Matthew Cappucci, who's a meteorologist for the Washington Post, usually in the US, but currently in Chile. Matthew, it's good to see you. I wonder how it's been for you watching all of this from afar. Have you ever seen anything like it?
Personally, I haven't. You know, when we talk about weather and long-track tornadoes, our minds always flash back to the tri-state tornado of March 18th, 1925, which is kind of the benchmark for the worst a tornado could be, or so we thought. This tornado that occurred earlier on over the weekend may have been on the ground for longer, up to 350 kilometers, and as an EF4 or perhaps EF5 tornado, maxing out the scale, causing more than 100 fatalities potentially. Now, the last time that occurred was with the Joplin, Missouri tornado back in 2011. Prior to that, you have to go back to 1953 to get a tornado that was likely deadlier.
Matthew, you've got so much technology now, you meteorologists and others. Why is it that we're hearing that people say they just weren't ready for this? They weren't.
Okay, hopefully it's not too busy for you, Matthew. We want your hairline to stay in place. Matthew Cappucci, meteorologist for the Washington Post. Thank you so much.
Thank you.